Welcome to another election special of John Redmann, Power of Attorney. Election season is upon us. There are many important local elections that are coming up on November 3rd. The presidential election is not the only important election coming up. Local elections play an important part in how our court systems are run and how it directly affects us here in Louisiana. For today's show, we will be interviewing candidates running for Judge of Civil District Court Division F and District Judge for the 24th Judicial District Court Division B. In part one, our guest will be incumbent Judge Chris Bruno and then his opponent, Attorney Jennifer Medley, who are running for Judge for Orleans Civil District Court Division F. This civil division is where our civil cases such as personal injury, accidents, contract disputes, successions, and foreclosures are filed. In part two of today's show, we will then have attorneys Pat Rooney and Chris Cox, who are running for judge of that division, on the show. That's for Judicial District Court Division B, to talk about their campaign platforms. The 24th Judicial District Court has original jurisdiction of all civil and criminal matters in Jefferson Parish, with the exception of certain juvenile matters. The 24th Judicial District Court has appellate jurisdiction of appeals from all city courts in Jefferson Parish. Stay tuned after this short break to meet our first guest. Welcome back. Prior to the show, we decided the order of our guests by coin toss. Our first guest today is Judge Chris Bruno. Judge Bruno is a native New Orleanian. Judge Bruno is a graduate of Tulane University Law School, where he received his Juris Doctor in 1988. Judge Bruno serves as Chief Judge of the Civil District Court for the Parish of Orleans and is the sitting judge in Division F, and has been there for 11 years, since January of 2009. Judge Bruno has also previously appeared on this show. Welcome back, Judge Bruno.
Thank you, John.
Thanks for being here. Let's get right to our questions, shall we? All right, so first, tell us a little bit more about your background and your experience sitting as the incumbent judge that you believe sets you apart from your opponent as the better person to serve as judge. And what about your past suggests you will serve this community well in the future in the role of judge?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. It's great to be back here in the new studio. I see it's very modern. So let me start basically with my background. I started developing a passion for the law in 1979 when I was in high school. My dad had a law firm, and my brother Joe and Frank were in the firm at the time, and I started as a legal secretary and really just kind of developed a keen interest in the law, because it was, and it's funny, people say your dad make you go to law school, your dad do this, your dad was a judge. I said no, we never did. It was just part of my, just kind of intuitive in a way that I just started moving that direction. So I worked throughout high school, college, and then law school. And so I practiced for 20 years as a trial lawyer in Bruno. Had handled hundreds of cases, and was getting frustrated in my latter years of working in that practice with the clogged courts, not getting trial dates, taking 5 months to get hearing dates. And I decided at that point in time, I had 20 years, I was blessed, had a very successful practice. I said, I'm going to go ahead and make a run for judicial office. I was lucky to be elected in 2008, started my term in 2009, did domestic for 3 years, which was rather enjoyable because you got to see more self-represented individuals and you got more opportunities to talk to them, as opposed to lawyers. There's more formal rules when you're dealing with lawyers as opposed to self-represented litigants. Then I began the regular docket, and that's been the past, from 2012 to present. And I've continued my promise from the get-go, was to run a fair, efficient, impartial docket and always be prepared. And I make sure my lawyers are prepared also. So that's where my record shows that I've done my job. I've handled over 12,000 contested matters in my court, trials, rules, or you know what rules are, and motions. And
well, tell people, what are rules?
A rule is where a case, either the lawyer feels that the case can be stopped or retarded through a legal remedy or a procedural hurdle. If you say have a claim against XYZ and the law doesn't afford a claim, that would be an exception or a rule, and the case might stop right there and be dismissed. A motion typically is a summary judgment where the facts, there are no questions of material facts in dispute that the plaintiff who is bringing the action can demonstrate to the court, and that would also result in dismissal. Those are the two most mainly things you see, exceptions in motions. And
That's
those
where both sides get to argue,
Yes.
one in favor of maybe stopping or throwing out the case,
Right.
and the other says, hold on, I think my case should get in front of the judge or the jury for a trial on the merits.
Absolutely, and it's a great process. It's used a lot by lawyers, sometimes overused, where there's still really obvious issues that shouldn't be brought in an exception. And so I started innovating ways to get these through the docket quicker. And what I do is I have rules every Friday, substantive rules, are motions and rules. And then, of course, I do discovery rules every Thursday. And I do the Thursday rules so that it doesn't impede the substantive matters, because it take a little longer. And I do my discovery rules on an expedited basis, because that was another complaint I had. I'm waiting 5 weeks to get a hearing date on the discovery rule, and that's retarding my case and both sides, defense and plaintiff. So I set these within 10 days, and the discovery process moves smoothly. So my philosophy is disclose and disclose often. I tell my lawyers when you meet with me, better disclose if you know any witness's name or document you're going to use. So that's been my and I'm learning. I learn and innovate as I go along. I was talking about before we started about how my pretrial order, I try to modify it when something strange comes up. An unusual issue that I've not prepared for or not had in the past. I said, let me just fix my pretrial order somewhat. So that's what I've done. I've done what I'm supposed to do. I did my job, took an oath, and I'm following my oath.
Okay, and then the application for the future is keep on that same path is basically what I'm hearing.
Absolutely, keep on the same path, but be able to change and modify, make it easier for people to get through the system. And again, with COVID, it's going to be a whole different animal. We're going to be seeing more Zoom, even after the COVID crisis. Cross our fingers, we find a cure or a vaccine for it, but we're going to be using a Zoom platform where you communicate over video, and obviously a digital filing where we can see documents online. I can handle documents online. So that is going to be the innovations that we see in the future.
You have my vote for Zoom. If it's not a critical hearing or motion, let's not clog the courthouses and the parking lots and fill up the rooms with judges.
Right.
Next question. What do you think is the most important role for any judge that the judge plays, not only in the courthouse but in the community, and how do you believe that you are qualified to help realize that role?
Well, I say it over and over again, accessibility. A judge has to be accessible. And I don't mean ex parte communications. What I mean, when the lawyers want a conference with the judge, and again, with the Zoom platform, 24 hours. Even without it, I was doing 24-hour turnarounds on status. And I tell my lawyers every time they come before me, please use me. Use me. I can be on call 24 hours a day, basically, as a judge. I don't take time. I'm not off the clock as a judge. We are elected to be a judge, and we rent these courtrooms, and we're there for the people. So accessibility, making sure that and one thing I do, and I think is very helpful, I meet with the lawyers on pretrial, so I can make sure I can streamline that case. I bring up things that they're not thinking about. You're going to need an expert witness in this case. How many witnesses are you really going to call at trial? I need to know, because I need to know if I have a jury trial, that those folks coming to serve on the jury can get back to their lives. So that's important. Community service is extremely important. Remember, John, we got to be careful what we do in the public. We're judges. We can't give advice, but we can serve the community, which I've been doing for the past 11 years, and that's the senior community. I've been on the board of directors for Mercy Endeavor Senior Activity Center since 2009 when I got elected. And my goal is to help those seniors enjoy their lives, make friends, socialize, which they weren't otherwise doing before the center became a reality.
Okay. Next question. Do you believe that all citizens have adequate access to legal help in our legal system? And if not, what do you think can be done to provide wider and better access to our legal system?
Well, we always can improve, right? We always know that New Orleans, unfortunately, has a large economically disadvantaged population. And those people can't necessarily afford a lawyer. So that's our crisis, right? We have people who can't afford court fees, and that's primarily in the domestic docket part of our court. And so we do offer those individuals, if they can't afford it, they can file for free, and then the cost will be allotted against the party, whoever it may be, at the end of the case. So the digital platform was important because one of the things we had problems with COVID was protective orders. As you know, those are predominantly females who are fearing for their lives, are endangered by either a mate or a spouse, and they're coming to the court to be protected. Those scare me because we're giving them a piece of paper. We can't follow them after they leave the courthouse, but we have to make sure they can get to the courthouse. We don't have a method by which that can be filed online, and we're working on that to where they can fill out that form online, get it filed, and get it notarized, which is another issue, notarizing, because the self-help desk is not operating now because of COVID. So we're now having this court reporter swear these individuals in when they come to court. And again, down the line, we'd like to have maybe a kiosk that they can go online and operate from there, or if they're lucky enough to have a computer, which we know is difficult, then we'd have it through their home system on Zoom to make their complaint via an electronic resource.
Okay. We're doing good on time, so let me ask you maybe a couple more questions. Is there anything that I've yet to ask you about that you think would be helpful for you to tell our viewers about? Something you might like to share to let the viewers know about you and your approach to being a judge, or your way of handling cases or litigants that come before you?
One thing I have to say, John, is that people it's so funny. I run into people, what do you do for a living? I'm a judge. Oh, don't put me in jail. So I think, education about what civil judges do. We don't put people in jail. Now, back up. We do as domestic judges on pass through child support when the state brings a child support claim, but those are pretty rough cases.
And let's be clear, there's in civil district court, you've got a domestic relations section.
Right.
Those are judges that handle family cases. And then there's the other judges in civil district court, which is one of the benches that you sit on, which don't handle domestic cases, but you handle all kinds of cases, not criminal, but civil.
And there's a but to that. But when Judge D'Souza went out when her husband died, a few of us got together and asked the Supreme Court Justice Johnson to appoint us to handle protective orders, because we did not want anybody to lose their opportunity to get into the court. Again, accessibility. And so I started doing those protective orders, and quite frankly, I would do them now if I was allowed to. I don't have a problem with taking more work on. My job is to help people, to allow you to have your access to court, to make sure that your disputes are resolved fairly. When you come in my courtroom, I don't care if you're a rich businessman or you're a poor person who has not have two nickels to rub together, you will be treated the same. However, we do have one benefit to self-represented litigants. The canons, Supreme Court canons, allow us to help those litigants. So one thing I certainly do when I'm in court and I have a self-represented litigant, which by the way is rare in a regular docket, I can then allow them a little more leeway in getting documents and evidence and asking questions. And in a judge trial, I can ask questions, so I'll sometimes take over to help them articulate what they're trying to say. I don't try the case for them, I can't do that. But my philosophy has always been, as a judge, I have to know the law. I have to be prepared. And a lot of lawyers don't understand. I expect them to be prepared when they come in my court. And I typically will ask questions of the lawyers. So people need to know when they come see me, I'm going to be ready. Don't think I'm going to be sitting there reading the memos on the bench. I will be ready for your case, because I don't want to let the lawyers waste a lot of time in court, because then the clients are paying those bills, right? So you want to make sure you can get your case in and out fairly, impartially, and efficiently.
Right. Well, we're almost out of time, but we do have time to ask you this. Can you tell us your ballot number and your website information?
Absolutely.
So our viewers can know where to find more information about you?
My ballot number is 74, and my website is judgechrisbruno.com. I'm on Facebook. I don't know how to find all that stuff, but I'm on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram. I'm not really social media savvy, but I have people helping me with that. It's so you can access me that way.
Sure.
And I have an email address. You can contact me that way. Ask me questions. I'm always available for questions.
Fantastic. Well, I'm afraid we have run out of the time allotted. Thank you again, Judge Bruno, for being with us today and telling us more about you and your past experience and your future hopes for the bench. We will have to stop there, but we will be back shortly after this break. Stay tuned for our next guest, Attorney Jennifer Medley. Hi everyone, and welcome back to John Redmann, Power of Attorney. We are currently covering the race for Civil District Court Division F. Attorney Jennifer Medley is the other candidate seeking to be elected to that seat, and she will be joining us in just a moment. Attorney Jennifer Medley is a graduate of Southern University Law Center. Ms. Medley has been practicing for over 18 years. She has represented individuals and families in New Orleans in domestic abuse situations. Ms. Medley cites experience as an ad hoc judge for a period of years as well, and public service as counsel to several nonprofits. Attorney Jennifer Medley, thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
All
I
right.
appreciate this.
It's our pleasure. So we've got a lot of ground to cover. Let's get right to our questions. So first of all, tell us a little bit more about your background and experience that you believe sets you apart from your opponent as the better person to serve as judge. And what about your past suggests you will serve this community well in the future in the role of judge?
Okay, so there's a lot to that answer. So I grew up in the upper 9th Ward area, they call it now. I'm a graduate of McDonough 35, and at the time in that area, the area was very mixed. So it allows me the ability to be able to understand what the community as a whole needs. I started out with the Attorney General's office representing various entities, state employees, actors in a variety of litigation, from workers' comp, even to the last case I dealt with was, it dealt with the roof on the Superdome after Hurricane Katrina. So the most complex to the more simple case, I've dealt with the whole range of it, even prisoner litigation. And what I find with all of that, when I look at the common thread in that, no matter what your outcome is, win or lose, state court, federal court, the person wants to feel like they've had their day in court and they've been treated fairly. And in all of those experiences, I've been able to do that with everyone. It's about how you treat people. With my current work as general counsel in healthcare for a Catholic healthcare organization, the directives that we have to follow are in line with how we treat people and how we provide care to people, no matter their ability to pay, walk of life, etc. It's how you treat people as a whole. And I think that all of those experiences would convey extremely well on the bench.
Okay. And the next question, what do you think is the most important role for a civil district court judge? What that role plays in our community? And how do you believe you are qualified to fulfill that role?
So first, with the qualifications for the role, I meet the qualifications that are set out by law. Whether a person is an incumbent or a first-time runner, the qualifications there are set out by law, and those have been met. So as far as the personality traits that I believe a great judge needs to have, it's critical that a judge has the temperament and the ability to be fair and follow the law. All of that can exist at the same time. You can be compassionate and you can follow the law. And sometimes when you follow that law, someone is not going to be happy because someone has arrived at that courthouse because something bad happened to them. And they're looking for that to be made right. The law may be on their side, the law may not be on their side. I think that it's in the way that you deal with your litigants and your everyday people that come in and how you explain that right or that wrong and how you render justice there. And that's what makes a great judge in that court.
Okay. Do you believe that all citizens have adequate access to legal help in our legal system, including in civil district court? And if not, what do you think can be done to provide wider and better access to this justice?
I think that the courts try. I think that everyone doesn't have equal access. And I think that to understand that, I think that you do have to be in tune to what the community at all levels need. So I'll give you an example of one item that creates an access problem. it's you have to have a credit card when you access the system. So it sounds simple to one. You think everyone has a credit card, but they don't. You know, everyone does not have a credit card. Poor people don't have credit cards all the time. With these balances on there if they want to be a pro se litigant, they've got to continue funding their case. And in this world of COVID right now, that's problematic because you can't really go in like you want to. So you could have someone who's high risk at home but still trying to manage their case, which is their right without a lawyer, but they're going to run into issues with a credit card, as simple as that. So that's an issue that I think needs to be examined. And I think while it's not the judge's call, I think the judges can work with the clerk's office to try to find some solution. Again, in working in healthcare, you know, we have to stay on top of grant opportunities for the public. And I know that there are a lot of grant opportunities for access to justice. I think that the judges can work with the clerk to try to help to come to something to provide better access for all populations, all demographics, so that they can manage their cases.
Okay. So, next question. Can you point to a moment in your career, or it could be a personal crossroads, when you had to make a tough decision, a tough call that maybe was not politically popular, that you believe helps demonstrate or exemplifies who you are, where you had to make a tough call that maybe wasn't the easy call, but it was the right decision to make, even if it might have cost you politically or it might have cost you in some other way. But you believe it was the decision that you had to make. To help us understand a little bit more about you.
I can give you two. I feel like the biggest one in my career that I had to make was during my tenure with the State Attorney General's office. I discovered that my white male counterpart was earning $20,000 more than I was as a salary. We finished law school the same time. Everything was equal. In fact, my workload was more. You know, and I brought it to my superiors. They tried, I believe that they tried to address it. It was always kind of kicked to the side. You know, at that time we were told things like, women want more money for less work. One of my coworkers was told when she asked about it, same situation, well, don't you have a husband? And it got to a point that, you know, it went unaddressed, and I had to decide if I was going to take another step, which would have been litigation. It was a very difficult decision to make because I knew that that would be frowned upon. And it was frowned upon. I made the move. You know, it was frowned upon. It still is today frowned upon. When I look at things, it was still the right thing for me to do. I think that even though we have hard decisions sometimes, you have to, I mean, we just have to end up doing the right thing. And so that was a very difficult thing. And even now, sometimes when I talk about it, I find it's difficult sometimes because I know that it was frowned upon. You know, so even when you talk about it, you really don't know how people are going to look at it. You don't know how employers look at it. I know how they look at it. But you know what? When I look back at it, sometimes I would ask myself at night, if I had to do it again, would I have done that? I think somebody had to say something because it was an injustice. And a lot of the staying silent is why we are, as a community and as a country, why we're where we are today. You know, so something needed to be done, you know. So that was one. Another time I had, as I was sitting ad hoc in juvenile court, I set a child's bond very high. It was probably high enough that people would look at it as an adult bond with a lot of restrictions, and people frowned on that. But in the whole set of circumstances for this child, while they may have frowned on that, you know, it was a situation that I knew was right, because not only was the child a danger to the community in the moment, but he was also a danger to himself. You know, because if this young person went down, if they continued down that same path that they were on, they were probably going to end up dead, you know, in this criminal element that we have right now. So it was a difficult thing to do, because I know that it was unpopular to do that, but it was the right thing to do. It was within the boundaries of the law to do it, and it was the move that I made.
Next question. What is your vision for the future of civil district court? How do you plan on making an impact if given the privilege of serving as a judge in civil district court?
And you said it right, a privilege. It will be a privilege. It'd be an honor. So I would like to work with the clerk's office, because again, a lot of times, you know, you hear judges talk about, you know, the fees, but I'd like to work with the clerk's office and see if we can't start finding some, whether it be grant funds or some way to look at the fees, the access to justice issue, as far as credit card use, find some way to even let people at least access the records, to look at them at no cost. Because just to look at the records, if you go into the courthouse and you can look at it free, you should be able to look at it free at your home. And we can't do that right now. So that's something that we would have to work with the court on. Well, I'm sorry, with the clerk on. But I'd also like to see how to get more involved in the community again. You know, you see the criminal court judges doing it a lot, I think because crime is what you hear about on TV. But you don't see it as much on the civil end, so I'd like to get more involved in community.
Okay. All right, I think we have time for one more question, but this one is not too challenging, I don't think. I think it would be helpful if the viewers could know your ballot number and your website address. Could you tell us that?
So my website address is www.electjennifermedley.com. My ballot number, just like the spirit of 76, is 76, the year I was born.
All right. And I assume people can go to your website to learn more information about you, your
more
campaign,
information about
platform.
Me. They can contact me if they'd like a yard sign. Any involvement in this time of COVID, any involvement is welcome.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining us today and letting our viewers get to know you better and what your campaign platform is all about. I'm afraid now we have run out of time, and
thank you for having me.
And we're going to have to conclude there. When we come back, we'll get to meet the two candidates running for the 24th Judicial District Court Division B in Jefferson Parish. So stick around. We'll be right back. Welcome back. In this next portion of our show, we will be introducing you to Mr. Chris Cox and Mr. Pat Rooney. Their race is for District Judge of the 24th Judicial District Court Division B. By coin toss, we determined that Mr. Chris Cox will be interviewed first. Mr. Cox's experience includes his having served as an assistant district attorney prosecuting criminals. He also spent 3 years as the chief operating officer of Jefferson Parish before returning to the DA's office under DA Paul Connick. Going back to his youth, he is a proud Eagle Scout. Additionally, he has an accounting degree from LSU and a law degree from Tulane University. Mr. Cox, thanks for joining us today on John Redmann Power of Attorney.
Thank you, John. I appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Great. Now, we are short on time. We want to get right to the questions. Are you ready?
I am.
Okay, good. So first, tell us a little bit more about your background and experience that you believe sets you apart as the better person to serve as judge, and what about your past suggests you will serve this community well in the future in the role as judge.
Sure. Well, I have been admitted to the bar for 21 years next month, and virtually all of that time has been spent in public service. When I first graduated from law school, I clerked for a federal judge here in the Eastern District of Louisiana for a year. I then spent nearly 4 years working for Paul Connick as an assistant district attorney, where I got a tremendous amount of trial experience. I then practiced civil law for a very short while because, like everything in life, it's all about timing, and I got a phone call from Jim Letton, the former U.S. attorney here in the Eastern District of Louisiana, and I got a job offer to be an assistant U.S. attorney, and I was there for 6 years before leaving to become the chief operating officer of Jefferson Parish for 3. Then I returned to the district attorney's office as Paul Connick's executive ADA. I gained a tremendous amount of experience, trial experience, in my 10 years spent in the courtroom, my first 4 as an ADA, and then my 6 as an AUSA. During that time, I tried 54 jury trials in state court and an additional 12 jury trials in federal court. So 66 times I have gone through the voir dire process. And as you know, the voir dire process is the process of selecting a jury. And that's what judges do. I mean, judges preside over trials and they preside over courtroom proceedings. And I have a significant amount of courtroom experience, and I think that's what sets me apart as a candidate for judge. In addition to my jury trial experience, I also have another 52 or 53 judge trials, 52 criminal and 1 civil. So again, I think it's the courtroom experience that really sets me apart.
Okay. Next question. What do you think is the most important role a judge plays in our community, a judge at civil district court, and how do you believe you are more or most qualified to fulfill that role?
Sure. Well, you mentioned civil district court.
24th Judicial District Court.
Correct.
That's what I meant to say. Sure.
So in Jefferson Parish, obviously, we handle both criminal and civil trials. The important thing for a judge is to be fair and impartial. You know, politics and partisanship has absolutely no place whatsoever in a courtroom. So it's kind of ironic that we have to go through this intensely political process in order to get there.
Sure.
But a judge has to be fair and impartial, and that is exactly what I will be. I have the temperament to be a judge. I am a good listener. I listen to both sides and make a decision. And that's what judges do. You may have heard the phrase before. They're like umpires. They call balls and strikes. They don't come in with preconceived notions. They simply listen to the evidence that is presented to them, and then they apply the law to the facts that they are presented with. And I am very well suited for that role.
Okay. Next question. Do you believe that all citizens have adequate access to justice, legal help in our legal system? And if not, what can be done to provide wider and better access for these folks?
Sure. That's always a concern, that some of the folks who cannot afford an attorney, you know, how do they get legal representation? It's often a question of funding, but we do have programs here in town who will appoint attorneys to represent them. And of course, that's what you want to see happen. I mean, you want everyone to have equal access to the courtroom. And again, I will treat everyone with dignity and respect and courtesy because it's their day in court, very much their day in court, and I certainly will provide that.
Next question. What can you provide or think of and provide an example of a moment in your career where you believe you may have had to choose between your political, where you had to make a choice, you had to make a decision, and it might have been against your better political interest, but it was because it was the right thing to do. Maybe you had to make a hard decision that it might have been unpopular for lots of reasons. Might have been unpopular with your friends or unpopular with some of your political colleagues, but it was the right decision you had to make. That might help us understand a little bit more about you and how you operate in this world of being a judge.
Sure. Well, I am very, very lucky in that regard because the majority of my legal career has spent prosecuting criminal behavior. That's very easy to get motivated to go to work to do. I have never had a conflict where I thought, gee, I shouldn't be doing this or I shouldn't be doing that. It was always knowing that I was doing the right thing. Because as a prosecutor or as an assistant district attorney, you don't represent the victim, you represent the state of Louisiana or the United States of America. And your victims are your witnesses. But when you do the right thing and you bring justice or you obtain justice for the victim, it's a very fulfilling role. It's very easy to put your head on the pillow at night after a trial when a defendant has been convicted of a crime and the victim can simply say only thank you, often with a tear in her eye, just to thank you for a job well done. So again, I'm very lucky in that regard because I've always been able to do what I know is right.
Well, you bring up an interesting point with that example and that story. What about sitting as a judge in Jefferson Parish, where you're going to have criminal cases and you're also going to have cases that are not criminal, they're going to civil
Sure.
cases, and that's all kinds of disputes.
Sure.
Is there something about sitting as a judge that motivates you to try and resolve disputes as a judge, as opposed to being a prosecutor going after bad guys?
Sure. And just to let you know, I have civil experience as well. I spent a year as a law clerk for a federal judge. And then for the last 6.5 years, my role really has been more of general counsel or in-house counsel for the DA's office, if you will, dealing with employment law issues and various other types of issues. My motivation for being a judge is the fact that I've been in the courtroom for a significant period of time. I've seen some really good examples of judging and judges. And I've also been very lucky to have some close personal mentors who were judges, including Judge Wally Rothschild. I don't know if you remember Judge
I remember him
Rothschild.
fondly, yeah. I
He was-
had lots of cases in front of him.
He was just a fantastic man, a wonderful human being, and a very good judge.
And a good singer.
He was, yes he was. And he
If
told
he ever
me,
made it to some of these bar conventions. But I digress. You please, I interrupted you. I apologize.
oh no, not at all. He told me a long time ago that he wished he had become a judge earlier in his career. He found it very fulfilling, and he told me that it's nice because you can ensure that the right thing is done. So absolutely, it's not all criminal prosecution. In many instances, you are resolving a civil dispute. And again, you listen to the evidence that is presented to you, and you apply the law without regard to bias. You apply the law to the facts. And so you can be confident that you are the one who is doing the right thing.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I do remember Judge Rothschild as a man of integrity who always tried to judge every case fair and square.
My inspiration for wanting to be a judge.
Oh, that's a fine tribute. Next question. What is your vision for the future of this court? Is there anything that you have in mind that you would like to attempt to do to make an impact while maintaining such high standards as a judge?
Well, obviously we are negotiating, or navigating rather, uncharted waters with COVID-19. And a lot of the judges are now conducting a lot of their hearings by Zoom or a teleconference. And is that the new normal? I don't know. It may be with us for quite some time. But I guess to answer your question, what I would like to do is use technology. It's obviously an ever-changing dynamic, but to use technology to make the court as efficient as possible. I intend to work hard, and I also intend to conduct a lot of status conferences in order to keep my docket moving, I intend to set trial dates and move the docket as efficiently as possible, both on the civil side and the criminal side. It might sound a little bit corny, but justice delayed is justice denied. So people want their day in court, and that's what the judge is supposed to do, to move cases towards resolution.
Okay. Well, we're just about out of time, but we do have time for one important question, which is as follows. Can you let our viewers know what your ballot number is and what your website address is, so they can find out more about you if they would like to go look that up?
Sure. My ballot number is 74, and my website is chriscoxforjudge.com. So www.chriscoxforjudge.com.
Okay, and I'm afraid we've run out of time, but we will be right back with our next guest right after this short pause. Welcome back, everyone. We are now pleased to welcome Attorney Pat Rooney, candidate for the 24th Judicial District Court, Division B, judge's race. Mr. Rooney currently resides in Jefferson Parish, where he has raised his family. He has practiced law in Louisiana for the past 30 years in both civil and criminal cases. He owns his own practice, and he has 7 offices across Southeast Louisiana. Very successful. Thank you for being here, Mr. Rooney. Shall we get started with our questions?
Absolutely, I appreciate the opportunity.
Great. Okay, so first of all, tell our viewers a little bit more about your background and experience that you believe sets you apart from your opponent as the better person to serve as judge. And what about your past suggests you will serve this community well in the future in the role of judge if elected?
Well, first, my educational background, Jesuit High School. I went to undergraduate and law school at LSU. I've been married for 29 years to Marianne, lived in Jefferson Parish my entire time of being married, raised 2 children, which I think is very important. I've coached in the playgrounds, which I think is very important to offer your time into the community, which is very important to me. But my legal background of this civil and criminal litigation, I've handled thousands of cases personally in 17 different parishes. We've handled exactly what the district courts handle. Felonies, family law, successions, contracts, you name it, I've handled it. I've learned a lot by going to the different parishes. I've learned what works, what doesn't work in the courts. I'm familiar with the people that come before the district courts, the attorneys, understand that their time is as important as anyone else's time. A client's time is probably more important because they're missing work. And understand that we have to move the cases. We have to keep the costs down for the clients because attorneys, unfortunately, have to be paid while they're in court.
Thank you. All right, next question. What do you think is the most important role for a judge that the judge plays in our community? How are you qualified, do you believe, to fulfill that role?
I think it's very important that a judge be prepared, obviously be fair and impartial. But being prepared sounds simple, but it's not. There are many different cases that are going to come before me in district court. As we stated, criminal and civil litigation. To sit here and say I know every law, well, obviously no one knows every law. So you need to be prepared for the case that's going to come before you. That means you have to do preparation, being a judge. You need to know the issues, you need to know the law. And that way, when you do have to have a trial, you're prepared to make a decision. And again, by being prepared to make a decision and being prepared, knowing the issues, it's going to make the process better for all parties.
Very good. Next question. Do you believe that all citizens have adequate access to legal help in our legal system, including in the courthouse and where it's based in Gretna? If not, what can be done to provide wider and better access to the courthouse and to justice?
I think it is difficult for lower or middle income families to afford good legal help. Personally, our firm, Southern Legal Clinics, we've helped thousands of families, thousands of individuals in lower or middle income situations. How can we change that? You can't force attorneys to work pro bono all the time. You cannot force an attorney to charge lower fees. I guess it comes from inside the person. Most attorneys are out there to help the general public. Could we help by having more funds being sent to the pro bono projects, things of that nature? I'm sure it could. But I think it's education to the attorneys. Attorneys have to be educated that, that people that come before the courts, again, their time is money. They cannot always afford the highest priced lawyers. They don't need to afford the highest priced lawyers because they will need access like everyone else. And again, it's educating the attorneys, educating the clients and the courts.
Okay. We have some time, so let me ask you another question. Is there anything you would like to share or let our viewers know to give them a little bit more of a perspective or understanding about you and what you might offer as a judge and how you would handle cases and people who come before you as a judge?
Well, first, I believe that you need to know that being a judge is community service. And in my lifetime, I've always offered community service. All the way back from coaching in the playgrounds to being the Dawn Busters Kiwanis, where we started the Rewards for Reading, which helps the public school systems in Jefferson Parish. We've actually won an international award for that. I'm a member of the Knights of Columbus. I've been a member of many school boards. So having not only my legal background, but my community service, I believe that is going to give me an advantage on the bench because I will know the people and I will know the issues that come before me because I've seen people's problems. And again, this district court handles all types of cases, criminal and civil. Actually, almost 70% of the cases will be civil litigation. And I believe that my experience is the right experience for the courts.
Okay. Next question. Can you think of or point to a moment in your career or maybe from your personal life when you had to make a tough decision, make a tough call that maybe wasn't politically popular? You had to make a decision that maybe wasn't the best thing for you, that politically, I mean to say, that you believe might demonstrate more to the viewers more about you and your attitude for doing the right thing, even if it's not politically advantageous for you?
Well, handling a lot of different cases and more importantly, the domestic cases. You have to make a lot of tough calls. You have to represent your client the best you can. There are children involved. There are support issues involved. And there's a lot of times where maybe your client, you may not have 100% belief in him, but you have to represent your client. And being an attorney, you have to represent your clients. And I've made tough calls, but also I believe that I've been fair. I've been fair to the legal system.
Next question, not as difficult to think of any examples. Why don't you tell us what your ballot number is and your website, if you could do that for us.
Absolutely. My ballot number is number 75. My website is rooney4judge.com.
Okay. And on your website, people can, obviously, they can learn more about you there and more details about your platform. And if they want to give you offer a yard sign spot or something, that's obviously that's the way people can reach out to you, correct?
That is correct.
Well, Mr. Rooney, thank you so much for being here with us today and sharing these insights into you and your law practice and your hopes and aspirations for the bench as a judge, if elected. That's all the time we have. Now, thank you for joining us for this special election edition of John Redmann, Power of Attorney. It is our hope that with this information, you are better empowered to make your voting decisions and that you will vote by mail or in person and do so safely. Remember, you can view this show and previous shows at johnredmannpoa.com. Be on the lookout for more special election episodes of John Redmann, Power of Attorney, and there are many more local races that we're going to be telling you about for the November 3rd election. For specific voter instructions, remember you can visit govotela.org. I'm your host, Attorney John Redmann, and I look forward to seeing you next time.